Hello everyone, this is Sankalp
And this is Gaurang.
and you're listening to our podcast, The Unwritten Case.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Fourth episode
Fourth
today.
episode.
And today we have Stephen Buchanan from Section C.
Woohoo!
Welcome to our podcast. Thanks so much for making it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys for having me. And the episodes so far have been great. We've had one fellow Section C, my seatmate, Luis, was on. So I felt extra inspired after listening to this. I learned stuff about him that I didn't know before, so which was crazy. I thought he'd already told me everything there was to know, but yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Like, that's exactly why we started this in the first place. Like, Sankalp and I interviewed each other during Reza's interview exercise, and I know him since week 1 of HBS. Exact same thing, like I thought I knew him inside out, and then I learned so much about him. I learned so much about myself in the process. Same thing with you, sitting like 2 feet away from Luis, maybe even less, and you learned new things. I'm glad it's taking the effect of what we wanted it to do. So glad.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was great.
So how's your semester going so far?
It's been good. It's been very busy. I can't believe it's already almost over. It's cold. I have 2 little kids here, so you'll see me chasing them around on Sesame Street or on the playgrounds pretty much every day. And but it's been. I mean, living here with little kids has been great. It's kind of a built-in instant community of a military vet and parents is sort of like the instant overlap over here, and all of our kids run around together. And this year there's more older kids, so that's been fun. It's almost more autonomy for the kids, and they're kind of run around and do their own thing, and the parents don't have to be quite so hands-on. So it's been great.
It's awesome. What are your kids' names?
So my oldest is Abby. She's 6, about to be 6. She's Christmas Eve baby. And then our youngest is Charlotte, or call her Charlie, and she just had her 3rd birthday.
Wow.
Wow.
Growing big, yeah.
I remember from the RC year when I met them we had the sports day, right? They were so young.
Yeah, Charlie was probably still bald then. She
Yeah.
was bald for a really long time. Now she's gonna leave here with nice,
Oh my God.
beautiful long hair.
Wow.
Yeah. What's something that's sitting on your mind lately?
Yeah, so the startup that I began last semester has been going well, but it's very busy, and you start thinking about, like, as you bring people on, and the commitments that come with that, to not just yourself but to other people. Like, okay, I got to like really follow through on this. Like, there's a lot of other people besides me that are like starting to count on this, which is a good feeling, and it's like very rewarding and puts a lot of purpose into what you're doing. But then you also got to come through and produce at the end. So um I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, but our main customer is the government, and the government just experienced its longest shutdown in history. And so that was an unexpected little speed bump for us, but you power through and you figure out ways to still be very productive. And but glad it's behind us and over with now.
Did you experience what Reza's been talking about? These unexpected bumps where you're close to death, but then you have to, make a decision right in the unknown. Did it seem closer to that, or it's not that extensive so far?
Probably our burn rate's low enough that
Okay.
thankfully it wasn't that extreme yet. However, it was enough that we kind of explored and had to flush out parts of the strategy. And to be honest, we're probably coming out with some better ways that we're thinking towards commercializing stuff to non-government customers. So it was probably turned into a forcing mechanism that helped us make some better strategic decisions than we were going to.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, even when those speed bumps come up, there is the opportunity to kind of dig a little deeper and say, oh, maybe there's actually a better way to do this than how we were looking at it before. But long term, I mean, the customers that will get the most use out of this will be the government for what we're doing. So we're glad to have them working again and talking with them.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely get more into your startup and a bit more in depth about what led to those events. But I want to rewind way earlier into your life. What's your wife's name?
Lauren.
Lauren. Okay, and she's here with you on
Yep.
campus. Awesome.
Yep, she's here.
So Sankalp told me a little bit about your story, but I'm just curious to hear. So, let's say you've met Lauren, and you're having the first deep conversation with her. You're, becoming more vulnerable. How would you present your life story and your background to Lauren for the first time?
Yeah, I think Lauren met me at a point of transition where I'd been a CPA before this and then was joining the Army. And those are not exactly two things that make sense to do next to each other. So I think kind of to go through what happened for that decision. And, one of the things that's really interesting about this podcast you guys are doing is that for one reason or another, I didn't end up doing a My Take last year. I think, we got the advice at the beginning of the year from Trevor Fetter of you guys are all going to wait too long, then you're all going to do them at the end, and then there's going to be too many. And so, and definitely,
That's what happened.
shockingly, he was right. That's exactly what happened. But yeah, I love what you guys are doing. It gives a chance to tell a story. I think when we did the same exercise that you mentioned with Reza, we did ours with Carolyn, and just seeing that, like, thinking about, like, I really haven't told my story that much. But so I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, very focused on basketball growing up. I kind of had like a distinct moment where my college basketball career ended. We went and played a Division I team that was so much better than us. I was playing at a very small college, and they had this 7 foot tall Australian guy. And I make a good move, and I go to shoot it, and he like volleyball spikes my shot into like the 10th row of the stands. And I was like, maybe this basketball thing's like ending for me pretty soon. Might want to think about school or do something like that. And so from there, I started to think about like, what am I actually interested in? And business sort of came up. But at the same time, as I was about a year away from graduating my undergrad, I was in Tennessee. My sister was an aid worker in Somalia, and she had begun as a teacher, and then now is teaching more of a like demining program to kids in northern Somalia. A lot of landmines have been left over from the years of the various wars that have happened. And I actually got the chance to visit her one summer, and I spent time over there as an intern. I don't know if I did much of any work, but it was a great experience for me, and I learned a lot and saw a lot of places, and got a lot of new experience for me from Somalia, Kenya. That's how I knew your bracelet, Ethiopia, Tanzania. And as I was leaving, though, I did have this feeling in my stomach, right, of this is pretty loose on the. Now I would know it was like the security, basically, right? Like they weren't taking all the necessary steps to make sure that everyone was probably as safe as they needed to be, given how volatile the situation was on a day-to-day basis. So I come home and begin school again, and
Back to Ohio.
I was I was in Tennessee now, but
Okay.
yeah. And so in school, and we get a call one morning, and my sister had gotten kidnapped over in Somalia.
Oh, God.
And so pretty quickly, the best of the best from the government were on the scene. My dad lives in Virginia, so I went back and saw my dad in Virginia. And we, had the government was on site and working with us and telling us, what they could to help and do everything. And my brother-in-law was in Somalia, so we were talking to him. And my sister, what had happened, had gone out on a training out to a couple hours south of where she was usually at. And basically they crossed into a different territory, and this territory is much more volatile. They'd asked her to do the training before, and she'd said no for this reason and not feeling comfortable. But for a mountain of reasons, she ended up going this time. And basically, the driver sold her out, and she got kidnapped and held for ransom. So pretty quickly after this happened, within the first couple weeks, there was a phone call to her organization, and they started making demands for money. And she's a white girl from America over there, so we must be filthy rich. We did not grow up rich at all, like very not rich. I grew up in between two cornfields in Ohio, and we were like did not have money to like come rescue her, like come bail her out, basically. So that was just not gonna happen, right? So this continues on, and my family is over there for a couple months at the beginning, thinking that we might be able to help. We're really just in the way, and people from all the government organizations are treating us excellent and doing all they can to be nice to us and kind to us and understanding of our situation. But we're really just in the way at the end of the day, and like kind of them accommodating us is keeping them from doing their work. So we go back to the States on their advice. They said the best thing you can do is try to continue your life somewhat, because this could be over tomorrow. This could be over in a year. Like, we don't know.
No.
So we have to go back to normal life. Obviously, it's not normal life, but the most normal your life can be, and kind of know you're on like a phone call away from hopefully really good news, right? And but you could also be a phone call away from really bad news. So that hangs over your head. You just do the best you can, and some days you kind of get through it, and some days you're completely in that world thinking about that. So but so she was kidnapped in late 2011, and then in early 2012, um, President Obama was president then. It was actually on a night that he gave his State of the Union address. And
Oh,
while he was giving the State of the Union address, he sent in SEAL Team 6, and they went in and they rescued my sister.
Wow.
They brought her, she was kidnapped with a colleague named Paul. They brought her and Paul home. Crazy mission. They parachuted out of airplanes, flew miles in the sky with their parachutes, landed, walked to the target, watched them at the target for hours, then conducted an operation, took care of all the bad guys, brought my sister and her colleague home, and yeah, and then my sister flew back, and the Department of Defense has some programs for people that are kidnapped to help them deal with instant trauma. And we were reunited with my sister shortly thereafter in Portland, Oregon. And so, pretty surreal experience on all fronts. But as that led into it, that was kind of my first big introduction to the government and SEAL Team 6 rescuing my sister. And I grew up and I didn't know anybody in the military. It wasn't on the possibilities whatsoever of, joining the military. And so that was the first time, as I'm almost done with college, that's the first time that I really ever thought about it.
yeah, when you were a basketball player and then like going for internship and like this is like completely different worldview altogether.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I mean, I can not even begin to imagine what must have gone through in your family during that time. How long was she like in this situation for?
Yeah, so it was 93 days. 93 days. And it's pretty incredible, the resources that were dedicated to bringing home my sister. And we had some level of her condition throughout, some awareness on her condition and where she was at and how she was doing. Um, but yeah, I don't think that she would have made it too much longer out there. And so that was part of why they did the rescue when they did. The conditions were right. There was no moon that night, right? It was dark. It was a perfect night for an operation. But then also, health wise, she wasn't going to make it much longer out there. They had to go in and rescue her. And we also, as a family, got lucky, right? For a million reasons, the government could not issue the authorization for this mission to go. It was very risky, right? Think about for those guys that jumped out of the plane that night
Yeah.
and were away from their families, and it's really cool. I've gotten to meet some of them over the years, and
Oh, you met them.
not all of them, but I've met some of them over the years, and it's really cool. I mean, how do you say thank you enough for that, right?
Yeah.
Um,
How old were you when this happened?
Yeah, so I was 22 or 23 when this happened. So
It's pretty young.
yeah,
I
pretty
mean,
young. And
what was going on in your mind? Like for 93 days, I feel like must have been a mess to kind of go through that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think some days almost like nothing, just like so overloaded with too much that you're almost just like kind of feel like blank, and just a lot of fear, right? Of like what's gonna happen, and um will we ever see her again, and how, like, what's it like for her, right? She's the one that's out there. And um feeling, pretty helpless, like you can't do anything to actually go get her, right? Like, like we didn't go do the mission, like other people did that, right? So, you feel pretty helpless, and um yeah, and just, like that constantly anxious, and like you want to do something, but there's really just nothing that you can actually do to help. And you don't see all the effort that's going on to bring them back either, right? There's
Yeah.
so much going on. You see the tiniest little sliver. And we were so blessed. We had an amazing FBI liaison who was kind of our chauffeur for the whole event. We're still great friends with them. Like I could call him right now if I wanted to, right? It's become like a dear family friend, and just an
Oh,
amazing human being. But it's a pretty helpless feeling. I put a lot of trust into other people to do their jobs, and thankfully they did.
we're glad that she made it back home. And yeah, no, it was a tough time.
And was that like your motivation to then join the military?
Yeah, so from there, after that, after all that event and SEAL Team 6 rescues my sister, I'm like, okay, well, I've got to serve in the military now, right? Like, what else could be your next step? And so, but just with not having any familiarity with the military before, I really didn't know where to even start. I was
How old were you?
so like 20, 22-ish, 23-ish. So I had one more year of my bachelor's degree left. So a lot of folks here have gone to West Point. It was too late for that. It was too late to do. There's called ROTC, where you go to college and get your officer training. So it was kind of too late for that. There's another option called Officer Candidate School. So of course I go sign up and try to go join the Marines for Officer Candidate School, because if you don't know where to go, then you just go to the Marines office first, of course. And they're like, great, we'll take you. You can either join in 2 months or 3 years. We have no idea. Like there was a pretty substantial drawdown going on at that point.
Okay.
So they just didn't need people. And so I kind of did that thing with the Marines for a little bit. Everything was fine. But in the meantime, as I'm waiting for that to come through, I got a job through my college at a CPA firm in town. And while the polar opposite of extremes, like you need a job, you need to support yourself. And so while I was waiting on the military thing and trying to figure out what would happen for that, I ended up taking the job at the accounting firm. The military thing, I think just as it took so long, I sort of dropped it and thought, okay, this is taking too long. I need to sort of figure out a different way. And I had the job at the CPA firm, so I'm like, well, I'm here, I'm doing this. Maybe let's just like try really hard at this and see if I like it, and maybe the military thing will go away and I won't want to do it. So I did the CPA thing and I did that for a couple years. I somehow got my CPA license and made myself study for that, which was I could not do that again if I had to. I don't know. It was so miserable, but somehow I just did it. And which now I'm glad I did, because I probably would not have gotten into here without that, right? So it's probably pretty helpful. But once I powered through, got my CPA license, passed all the exams, worked for a little bit longer, and then kind of caught my breath and looked around and was like, no, I still want to join the military. And one of my best friends, his name's Scott. He and I played basketball together in college and lived together in college. And he had joined the Army and done Special Forces.
Mm.
And so talking to him and talking about what Special Forces does, and very focused on our partners, the people that we live with and work with and train overseas. Um, quickly after a few minutes of research, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. So I took the very unconventional step of enlisting in the military. Most people are officers. I chose to enlist. The reason for that being that I wanted to go straight to Special Forces, and I wanted to spend as long as possible on a team in Special Forces. So I enlisted. So, what comes with that is much lower rank. It's lower pay, definitely less prestigious at points. But what I got was more control
Yeah.
over my timeline and what I was going to do. But you have a couple big hurdles in there, and one is you have to pass what's called Special Forces assessment and selection.
Mm.
So I joined the Army. Right before I joined the Army, me and Lauren, my wife, reconnected. We had gone to college together. I'm a couple years older than her, and we'd gone to college together. And I graduated and moved on. And once she graduated, we reconnected. And went on a couple dates. I knew I was going to leave for the military pretty soon on the first date. So on the first date, I told her, I was like, hey, I had a crush on you in college. I think that I like you now. I'm going to be gone in 2 months to go join the army. I'd like to take you out on another date, like in 2 nights or something. And she just kind of looked at me and she's like, okay. And so then, we dated right before I joined the army. We dated and had a good time, and we left it kind of open ended, like, hey, I don't want you to feel like obligated while I'm in basic training, and you can't talk to me and stuff. But we actually wrote letters the whole time I was in basic training.
That's
We still
so nice.
have them. Yeah, it's thankfully she wrote me back, right? If she wouldn't have, we might have never gotten together. But she wrote me back letters and came and visited me once we were able to have visitors. She got stuck with my dad and my brother-in-law one time for like 2 days straight when they like basically didn't let us out when they were supposed to. So she came to visit and saw me for like 20 minutes and got to know my dad and my brother-in-law then. So that was fun for her, I think. But so I joined the army, do all this stuff, do the airborne school where you learn how to jump out of planes, and you do that a few times, and start the training to go to special forces. It's called Special Forces Assessment and Selection, and it's pretty grueling 21-day process, and you go through all sorts of physical and mental tests, and you're wearing a giant ruck, so a giant backpack the whole time, and you're out in the woods and doing land navigation and carrying all these obstacles. And through all the training, I'd done really well. At this point, I was like roughly 24, 25. So I was older than everyone, definitely was more mature and, physically was ready I'd trained really hard and had been an athlete growing up. So was physically ready for it. But I went out to selection, did fine on the beginning part of it, went out to what's called land navigation. You have a giant forest and you basically get like the coordinate for like a tree that's like 8 kilometers away, and you have to like walk using a compass and a map, find this like tree or like a little tent or something out in the forest. And I just like laid an egg. I failed selection. So I'll never forget this the rest of my life. But time finally runs out. I've been scrambling around hoping to find this like last point for at least 2 hours.
Yeah.
Hopeless. With about 30 minutes ago, I was like, this is not happening. I'm not finding this thing, but still, run around, and they come pick you up in a pickup truck and take you away. And just sitting in the truck and just being like, I just failed this. Like, my life and my future is no longer in my control. Like, once you fail, the army can do anything with you. Generally, because you've already trained, they'd send you out into the infantry.
Yeah.
But they don't have to. If they need you to do something else, be a cook or be a truck driver, they can do that. And they do. And so I'll never forget that feeling, riding in the back of this pickup truck to go back to kind of the HQ and just thinking like, I could have some very unpleasant moments ahead of me. And so I get there, and one of my good friends from the training, he had, it's tough to make it through. A lot of people fail, so there's nothing wrong with failing, right? But he had already failed and was waiting there, and I walked in, and he was more mad for me than I was. He threw his drink on the ground, and was like, "Yeah, I can't believe you're here," stuff. And I was like, here we are. So, we kind of wallowed in our misery together for a few days. And then eventually go home, and, from there you wait a while, and then you get orders, and that tells you where you're going to go. So then eventually I got orders to go to Italy, and I was going to go to Italy in 6 weeks. And so at this point, Lauren and I have been talking and dating, and it's serious. And I tell her like, hey, I've kind of good news, I think. And she's like, what's the good news? Oh, I'm going to go to Italy. And she's like, oh, okay. I'm like, it might be good news for you. And she's like, I was like, you can come too. And she's like, oh, that's so great. And I was like, but there's a condition. What's the condition? We have to be married to go. Wow. So and she just kind of looks at me, and then just sort of, I was like, well, what do you think? Should we like get married? And she sort of thought about it, and she's like, we could get married. And so then like we kind of just like started planning out the wedding from there, because we didn't have enough time. And then I very quickly after that got the ring, did a formal like proposal, got down on one knee. I surprised her. I think maybe I surprised her a little. One of my best friends was snuck out behind us and took some pictures. We didn't deprive her of the experience, but we already had booked a venue and had the dates.
It's 6 weeks.
Yeah, by the time I proposed, so I don't know if she was really that surprised. So I did my best, and yeah, flash forward to 6 weeks, we got married, and then pretty much like within the next couple days, we're headed over to Italy, and we're over in Italy for the next couple years.
That's a very unique way to ask someone to get married.
Yeah, like hey, I guess we could get married.
We're going to Italy. You in? Let's get married. That's
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
Stephen, a question. So I see that like this journey till Italy, there has been like couple of moments where things seemed out of your control, and then you sort of did something to, I think, at least get some control. I think it's like speaks about agency. I think like how much you value that in your life. What were those like? You had some of the moments which I haven't heard ever before. Like, what gave you the permission to act and like not retreat in those situations? Like that truck ride back to HQ might have been a situation where like, okay, I'm out. I won't be doing it. But you stuck. Like, what gave you that?
Yeah, I think for me, actually, a big part of it comes from that my mom passed away when I was pretty young. And I think that that's really given me this outlook on life that, like, I really do see how short life can be, you
Mm.
know, and see that it's not guaranteed how long you're going to be here. And so, do you want to live life with, like, well, I can do this next year, or I could do this in 5 years? Or if it's what you want, do you want to do it, now? Like, if and it needs to make sense, right? And have some level of being logical. But if it can be logical, then why not do it versus live with the regret of not doing it. And I think as my career progressed and I was in special forces and lost some people around me, and that's only been kind of accentuated of that. If it's something that you want, I'd rather go for it and fail than wonder my whole life, like, well, what if I would have gone? Like, I'd
Yeah.
probably be a partner. See, I'm old now, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm the old man in this section. I'd be a partner at CPA.
You are the wise man in this section.
Yeah, thank you, of course. But I'd be sitting there wondering, like, well, what if I would have joined the army? What if I would have tried to go to special forces? And even if I would have failed special forces and then gone back and failed again, I would have rather have done that and had the adventure and had the and known, right? Like, if you try stuff and you just fail and you can't cut it, there's some
Yeah.
tough reality in that, but at least you know, and you don't have to spend your life wondering, like, well, what if I would have done it, or what if I would have tried this, or what if I would have done that. And I think, flash forwarding to here to start the business, like, one, I'd be the worst employee anyone's ever had. I would be completely like unruly, and I would work hard, but like I've just got to the point where if like I just do generally kind of want the autonomy to like work really hard, treat people well, but kind of have that vested interest in what we create and build is ours, as bandoliers for what we're doing now. But too, like, I mean, being here, like, for me in my situation, it made sense for me and my family to do this, and I just wouldn't want to leave here because I came here knowing I want to do something entrepreneurial, right? You could have asked me when I was 5
Yeah.
years old, what did I want to do? I wanted to run my own business, right? Like, I was like out there selling my dad's tools back to him in a shop with like my own little store. It was like a 5-year-old kid, right? So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and it's what I grew up around, various levels of success. But so to me, that's how I feel. I think there's a lot of reasons that lead into that decision for everyone. It's a very nuanced decision. It's completely different for everyone. And
Yeah.
it's not a one size fits all thing. But for me to come out of here, I think if I wouldn't have done something entrepreneurial, whatever form that looked like, it would have been
Yeah.
that would have been one of those moments like, well, what if I would have tried, or what if I
Yeah.
would have given it that shot? So I think, just that worldview that life is short, and I don't want to live with the regrets of what if I would have tried something, because that time can be gone in the blink of an eye, and you don't want to have that happen. And whether it's a relationship with someone that you know have fallen out of touch with, like someone important, like sibling or parent, whatever, or an opportunity that you've always wanted to do and have put off for probably good reasons, right? Like there's a lot of good reasons to put off some risky decisions, and maybe they make sense sometimes too, right? I'm not saying they don't, but you know, those regrets I think are a killer. And so for me, it's enabled me to kind of take the step and go for things, um, and hopefully, you know, in a controlled enough manner. But you know,
Yeah.
there's definitely some like there is some you gotta just step off the edge and do it. But once you're in the thick of it, I don't think you're gonna look back and wonder like, oh well, what if I would have, you know, done whatever else?
Yeah.
What if I
Yeah.
would have kept being an accountant instead of the army? Like I've never once in my life wondered that or thought like, oh, I should have kept being an accountant. I've never thought that. Not that accountants aren't great,
Yeah.
right?
For you.
Business, if your accounting is
Yep. Yep.
screwed up, you got big
We all need
problems.
them.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, for you, like your fear of regret was actually way higher than fear of failure.
Yeah, totally. And then, you know, the biggest thing with like starting a business that's helped, when I failed selection, that was a failure. Like, you know, in the class, Raz is always like, none of you guys have ever failed. And I just like, I feel that moment in the truck and the air on me. And I'm like, no, I've failed really bad. Like that was a crippling, like it took a long time to get over, right? Like, I mean, in this telling the story, I was in LA for a couple of years, but there's a lot of like self-pity in those couple years, especially at the beginning. And you know, then for whatever happened, I eventually got my resolve back to go train and get ready, and then have a much better, very good experience there. And I finished the Lena, of course, with a couple hours to spare, and put my feet up on a log next to a fire.
That was your
The
second
second
test,
time
right?
around. Yeah,
Yeah.
the second time around. That was a good feeling. Kind of come full circle, and the polar opposite feeling to the pickup truck and failure is the feet up by the fire, you know, with time to spare. So
Very cool. How has HBS challenged the mindset you came in with?
yeah, I think so. I came in and was like, oh, I'm going to do entrepreneur through acquisition, which I still love ETA. Like, I think that there's so much great stuff about it. Great way to pursue entrepreneurship. But I think that I probably actually did want to do a startup, but I'd always told myself, I can't do a startup because I'm not the tech guy, or I don't have like the idea or the this or that. And I think being here and meeting a lot of people who've been awesome entrepreneurs already, you know, or meeting people who are actively awesome entrepreneurs, reading the cases, meeting faculty members that are great entrepreneurs, kind of seeing like, you know, like there's a lot of different ways that this can happen. So don't tell yourself that you can't do one of those just arbitrarily, right? Just because you don't have the idea or something. If you're open to it, put yourself out to it, you might be surprised where the idea comes from. You know, I would have never thought doing a quantum company out of New Mexico, leaving here, but here I am, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
No, with that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your startup and what you're working on? Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of last year, I got connected with another entrepreneur from here, from HBS, and military vet, and you know, I just asked her like, how are you doing a quantum startup? You're in the Air Force, came to HBS, now you're doing a quantum startup. Like that makes no sense to me. How are you doing this? And he basically just told me that, you know, if you're interested in this, then there's people that would love to talk to you. And so I said like, sure, that would be great. I'd love to talk to these people. Just thinking he's kind of paying lip service to it. I would never hear back from him, never get connected to anybody, and you know, life would go on, right? And that would just be that, and pleasant conversation in passing, and that's it. But he lived up to his word, connected me to some folks, and I met. There's a big sovereign wealth fund out of New Mexico, and they give money to venture capital funds, and those venture capital funds have the mandate to help create new companies and startups and economy in New Mexico. And in New Mexico, there's the national labs. There's Los Alamos and Sandia, and then there's a large Air Force base. So a lot of it would be, you know, deep tech or defense tech, and I'd had a little bit of experience with that during my time in special forces, and knew that it was something that would be interesting to me, but kind of, again, I don't have the idea. I'm not an engineer or a coder or anything. So like, how could I do this? And so talking to them, basically, they were like, well, there's all these great scientists who have invented this amazing stuff. They have no idea how to run a business. They don't know what the Navy is from the Air Force. They just know that this quantum thing that they made is amazing for all these reasons. And they want to keep inventing stuff or building stuff, or they don't want to run the business. They don't, do sales calls or manage all the people, right? So
And
I
you're
was
Stephen from HBS.
yes, and here I am, like, oh well, I don't know how to build a quantum radar system, but and so yeah, so from there I got introduced to two senior scientists from Los Alamos, and we kind of did our founders dating thing and made sure we actually liked each other and had any
Nice.
interest in building something out together, that we were people that we could work with together. And
Wait, just to confirm, this is the same person that introduced you to the quantum.
so there was almost kind of like a matchmaker from one of the VCs, and he kind of put us all together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he was kind of out there doing more like almost like tech scouting, and so we connected with him really well, and then he connected me to the scientist, and so we just kind of got to know each other better. Took me a while to understand the technology. We're focused on quantum radar and sensing, which is not something I would have ever thought I would be working on coming out of here. The so what of our technology and Diego's invention is that we circumvent the quantum memory bottleneck that's kept this from being a usable technology in the field, from being a deployable technology. We're also working on what's called a metasurface antenna, which is really cool. And I started my career off at Special Forces and communications. So this one I was able to wrap my head around a little better, but it's basically like an antenna that you could integrate into the frame of a car and could have a very similar to like a Starlink type connectivity to
I
a
see.
satellite but from the car, but built into the frame, right? So, and then you can extrapolate that out, make it bigger, go on bigger things like airplanes or satellites even in space. So
Yeah.
um, so but it's been super fun. One thing that we're doing that is unique that I would like for people here at HBS to just see all the different ways that could go into starting a business is we recently won a spot in what's called the New Mexico Lab Enabled Entrepreneurship Program. And so through this program, I have a full-time salary for 2 years, health benefits, moving stipend to move me and my family out to New Mexico. We have a contract, like our formal partnership with Los Alamos, which is why I can just like talk about it, right? Is that we have like a fully formalized partnership contract. It's very specific on who owns what and who's doing what part of the work, and money for the scientist time. And then we have our own dedicated lab, and we get to put our full-time employees into that lab. And we actually just hired our first full-time employee
Congrats.
within the last couple weeks and have brought on a couple scientists. So great opportunity, but
All this considering the fact that you still own 100% of the business.
yeah, and this is all non-dilutive,
Wow.
So it's competitive. It took a long time to get through, but it's worth it. You're getting all these resources, not to mention you get plugged in with the state and get resources from the state. And you're like, I'm like going to be at Los Alamos around all these inventors every day, right? Like that's pretty cool. There's some of the world's most amazing technology is getting developed there, and you get to be kind of like business guy around. So those type of programs exist, right? You got to keep your eyes open and be listening and on the lookout. But I would just say it like, don't limit yourself, or like if something comes up and maybe it's something you haven't heard of before, but it sounds interesting, it might be worth checking out, because I could have easily been like, New Mexico, oh, I don't want to live out there. And it's going to be really different than Boston. And I like Boston, so there's parts of that are going to be rough, but we're a very outdoorsy family. My girls always ask me when we're going to go camping, and so I'll get to take them camping a lot out there.
Sankalp, you want to move to New Mexico?
Oh, if he gives me a job, sure. No, I'm so inspired. I think this new venture that you are exploring, I think you have a great family. I think I'm really inspired, and kind of just makes me think. this life that you're currently living is kind of an outcome of all the things that have also happened in the past. Like those things about like being wanting to react instead of retreat. What part of life do you think currently is honoring that past, and what part do you think you want to let go of?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is kind of just like going for it, right? It's kind of like honoring the past, and then but there's always like keeping the balance of things is hard when you're like building a business is, while it's rough, it is like it is so fun. Like it's so fun, and even the failures, even the minor failures, right? There's something fun in of like, oh, this person told me no. Well, I'm going to show them because I'm going to get the fun that they are jealous of, to or whatever, right? But then like for me, especially with having the two little kids and
Yeah.
my daughters and my wife, it's trying to keep that in balance the best I can, and balance. Perfect work life balance is a myth. You'll never have it all at the same time, but to keep it the most in perspective you can, because at the same time I don't want to look back and think like, oh, I was so involved in the business that I missed all the soccer games. Part of the reason for doing entrepreneurship was so you could be the soccer coach and go to the games, and then maybe leave work at 3 o'clock, coach soccer, and then work a couple more hours at night after
Yeah.
they go to bed, right? So that balancing act is tricky, and you're working on the business and you're enthusiastic and you're getting momentum, and so you want to double down and go harder, and but maybe it needs to wait till after bedtime.
Yeah.
See, I'm curious, like, while you've been exploring internally and externally, what's your purpose in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think of like what's my purpose, I see it like in a few different parts. Like one is to make sure that my kids have a better life than I had.
Mm-hmm.
One is, and that's, I'm so thankful for my dad. I'm so lucky I had an amazing father, but there were things in our life that were pretty tough. And to be honest, like I would like it if my kids had it a little bit easier. And so far they're off to a good start. Like Abby learned how to ride her bike at Harvard. That's crazy. Like who does that? And so that's the big one. But I think if I were to take that a little bit more on the professional side, like I want to create a big company that creates a lot of good jobs for people and like gives people the feeling of meaning and purpose in their work, and gives them an environment where they can contribute to a mission. I mean, we're defense focused, we're a very mission driven company, and I think that can be a really great part of your work. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing the accounting for it or whatever, right? Like you're sharing in the mission for sure. And so to me, that's a huge part of what I want to build coming out of here. And so yeah, but maybe try to keep some level of balance in there, right? But yeah.
So not just build a business, but also give people an opportunity to also like align with that mission and purpose of your business as well. I think that's really big. That's
Yeah.
really great. Um, Going back to the HBS community, this is the podcast is for. You clearly, I think, like value family a lot. What do you want to convey to the HBS folks who might sometimes prioritize career over their family? Um, yeah, any things, any advice?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I always think is like there's not ever like the perfect time to start having kids. So, obviously there are better times than others, and having a very stable relationship with your partner, being in a place of financial security so you're not stressed the whole time, right? Like all those things, but they'll never be perfect. The stars are never going to align perfectly to introduce this little bundle of chaos onto your life, and your time is no longer your own. And but you don't want to look back and think like, oh, I had one kid and I wish I had three, or and
Yeah.
it's different for everybody, right? That's my prerogative. I'm in the thick of it of raising kids, so that's what I really think of. But everyone's path is different, right? Maybe some people do want to value their career more, and that's totally reasonable path too. But for people that know that having kids is a big part of it, a big part of their life for them, I would definitely say like there's better times than others, but there's never a perfect time. So once you get to a good time, that's probably good enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope my parents don't hear that in the podcast. They're after me already of getting married.
Go on, come on, take the hint.
Yeah, so I guess coming close to the end of the podcast, this is our signature question. We're called the unwritten case. 10 years down the line, you're now, successful entrepreneur in New Mexico, hopefully working on your startup with the government. How do you see your case being framed?
Hopefully our case, one, doesn't have anything about me being in jail in it. So hopefully we don't have anything of that. But hopefully it's about how we started. And then I was doing some analysis basically for like a investor and like going through our burn rate, and ours is incredibly low, right? For what we're getting, how far we can stretch every dollar at this stage is very, very far. And I hope that there's some learnings from that can help folks as they look at starting their business. We've really leveraged some resources between the national labs, the state, and like the government. So we've managed some funding paths and some different ways to access resources and equipment and talent. So I hope that that's a big part of the case. It's like some very alternate ways to do, because what we do could be very capital intensive, right? So we're using a very unique path at the beginning, and I think all those paths align eventually to it's going to be expensive to build out hardware, right? But if we can get much further advanced in the hardware and know exactly what we're building, then we're so much closer to that end product that we need to have. That's a deployable, fieldable system.
Amazing. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us, and it was really, really a thrill listening to your story and learning a bit more about you. It was actually my first time meeting Stephen today, so it's a great opportunity to get to know the community even better.
No, really, I think while we have had this chat before, but as Goran said earlier, there was still something more that I learned about your story, and just inspired me even more. So thank you. I can't wait for people to listen to this.
Yeah, and to those of you tuned in, stay tuned for the next one. Thank you very much. That's us signing off.